Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Jones, and I'm here again for our second collection conversations. And I want to welcome you all back to Los Angeles and say hello from wherever you are coming to us from. A couple of weeks ago, we had our very first collection conversation and with Kate Strasden, and we were really excited about how amazing it went and the number of visitors that we had from all over the world, including Saudi Arabia, I noticed. So it's incredible that we can come from our houses into your houses, no matter where you are in the world. So today we are going to be talking about the FIDM Museum. For those of you who have never been to the FIDM Museum, been to Los Angeles, and don't really know our collections very well, I thought it would be fun for us to just kind of give an introduction to the FIDM Museum and talk to Christina Johnson, who is the Associate Curator of the museum. I've been with the museum now, I can't believe, for more than 20 years, and Christina has been almost as long. So I'm going to find Christina now and invite her to join the conversation. Okay. She should be coming up any second. There she is. Hi. So, Christina, first, I have a question for you. Do I have hearts going all over?
Yes, you must love the FIDM Museum a lot because there's hearts all over you.
I really do. And honestly, I don't know what I pushed on my phone to make that happen, but it's kind of pretty. So I'm just going to leave it, being surrounded by love.
I think that we can work with that, definitely.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
So welcome to your very first collection conversation. This is really exciting because we have a lot to talk about, and because you and I have lived with each other for a very long time.
Oh, I feel like we're just talking in my office. We're just talking in my office.
Well, it's actually kind of interesting because for everybody, the way our office is laid out at FIDM is that if you walk into our office suite, my office is on the right-hand side and Christina's is on the left, and there, there's a wall in between. So literally, like, this is our wall right here. So this is kind of like Christina and Kevin in the office anyway, and we're always yelling to each other because we can hear each other from our offices.
Right.
So how long have you been with the museum, and why did you first hear, or how did you first hear about the museum?
Let's see, I've been with the museum 17 years, I think, this week, and it's gone by in an absolute instant. And the first time I really heard of the museum was with our annual Art of Motion Picture Costume Design exhibition. And I think it was in high school, and I saw an advertisement somewhere for all of these wonderful movie costumes that were going to be displayed at FIDM, and then I learned that it was an annual occurrence. And so my mom and I would drive from Santa Monica, where I grew up, to downtown LA. It was a big trek for us, and we would see the costumes on display, and we always looked forward to it. And I did not know at that time that the FIDM Museum had a historic and contemporary fashion collection. So that I found out about a bit later, but that's how I knew of FIDM, the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and the museum.
I think it's how a lot of people find us, really, because we are geographically close to Hollywood, and it's something that we have really championed over the years. This year's exhibition was the 27th annual Hollywood exhibition, and we're proud of ourselves because we've helped to elevate, to raise the knowledge of how costumes are done in the movies, to bring the costumes from literally on screen into our galleries so people can stand in front of them and kind of freeze frame their movie, their favorite film and scene and character to look at those costumes in detail, because so much of that gets lost on screen as the characters go by very quickly. So it's neat that is a kind of a full circle for you, because you now have worked on 17 Hollywood exhibitions.
I have.
Did you ever think you'd be working on something like that when you were a visitor?
No, and I would have been so excited. I would have thought, oh my gosh, my life's going to be amazing to be able to work with these costumes and learn about it and work with such an amazing team. Yeah, it's special.
So you and I, did we know each other before you interviewed for the museum?
Yes, yes. And I know this is a setup. We knew we were going to tell all of you how we met. And we did meet before I started working at the museum. And maybe some of you have heard this before. It's a pretty funny story. I was a graduate student at New York University, and I was getting my master's degree in visual culture costume studies. And at that point, the program was held very much in conjunction with the Costume Institute. Many of our costume history classes were at the Costume Institute. We all did internships there, and it was an amazing program. It still is. And so this was, Kevin, was it December of 2002? It must have been December of 2002.
It was December 5th.
Okay.
Yes, December 5th.
2002, and I was standing in the old Costume Institute storage. It looks different than it does now. It had rows and rows of banks with the blinds, the kind of Venetian blinds that you would roll up. And I had just finished a class, a costume history class, and I was standing in the door jamb. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I don't know, it's seared in my mind. And I was in the door jamb, and I was about to start my internship in collections in the afternoon. And I was talking to Michelle Major, who was my costume history professor. And I was very excited to share with her that I had chosen a topic for my master's thesis. And it was going to be on Jenny Lind, the Swedish Nightingale, and her influence.
Wait, I know who Jenny Lind is.
Yes, and then this tall man butted in to my conversation with my instructor saying, oh, I know who Jenny Lind is. That sounds great. That's exciting. Tell me more. And I don't remember what he looked like, but he was tall, and I'm sure I was polite. And I know, it was a great conversation. And then I went on my way. I think I was working with Hermes that day, and I don't know what you did, but that was it. So there you go. And then I was very excited that the opportunity to interview for collections manager at the Fitta Museum came up in the spring of 2003, just before I graduated. And so I flew home to Santa Monica, stayed with my parents that night, and then went and did my interview at the museum. I remember walking into the office, and there were a lot of clothes. I think there was a big collection being processed. I was a bit overwhelmed, but I was excited, and I interviewed and took a tour, and I was offered the job that afternoon. I remember calling my parents and saying, oh, I got a job. I got a job in the field. And I was so excited flying home. I was going to tell Marcy, my roommate, who's at the Costume Institute now, and all my friends that I'd gotten this job. And then I thought, I was in my seat. I was in my seat on the plane. And I thought, hold on a minute. That man who butted into my conversation at the Costume Institute, I think he's the guy who interviewed me. I think he is my boss.
I have a feeling that exactly at the same moment, the light bulb went off for me that, wait a minute, that was that tall, thin lady in the Costume Institute storage with Jenny Lind. Now, as I remember it,
right, and I know it started.
I had actually, I was visiting New York for a long weekend, and I wanted to see a couple of their Charles James gowns. And so I made an appointment, and they had been pulled out for me, and I had been in storage examining and taking measurements and, writing notes and things. And I kept being distracted because literally on a table right here was the famous Elsa Schiaparelli shoe hat, just sitting there, and so I got to see.
I think we had covered like the 30s and the 40s in my class.
Oh, hadn't you also had a Charles James afternoon there or something?
Yes, some of the Charles James pieces had been pulled, and our assignment was to write like a little card catalog entry for each of the pieces. And I had chosen a Charles James, an ice blue evening gown, Charles James, for my piece.
What's funny is that's the very gown that I had requested to see that day. Yeah. So there was already this synergy between.
Yeah, they had pulled it and thought, well, let's have it for the class, and then this tall guy wants to see it too.
Oh, okay. So I just remember, over here there was this two people standing and talking, and I'm just doing my thing. and you can't help it over
I
here.
know, I
Eavesdrop.
know. And yeah.
And,
So
and I heard Jenny Lind, and I thought, oh, that's neat. So, yes, I introduced myself.
yeah,
But I swear I was at my desk just doing my thing, and all of a sudden I was like, that's that woman that was in storage. And
yes,
so that is how we actually ended up meeting and
yes.
then later connecting together.
Yes, I think
And
then when I started the position, I think you were asking me about the projects, and I had mentioned Jenny Lind, and that's when it kind of all came together that we had met previously.
yeah, it's the same for me too. I would never have remembered your face. I can
I do
remember
not remember your
seeing
face.
you. Yeah, but I don't remember your face at all or who the other person was. I didn't realize it was Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what I think is really fun, all these years later, the projects that we have worked on, the collections that we've organized, talks that we've done, travel that we have done. We've been really fortunate to go with pieces of our collection that have been loaned to other institutions around the world for installations and deinstallations. But also, there's an interesting full circle just this year with Michelle, because you and I have a long time project and catalog coming out. It's Sporting Fashion, Outdoor Girls, 1800 to 1960, and the catalog comes out in mid-August. And we asked Michelle Major if she would be our content editor for the catalog.
Yes.
So who knew that literally 17, almost 18 years ago, that the three of us would still be connected all these years later, working on really, really fun projects.
It is amazing. It is amazing. Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about our collections,
Yeah.
especially since you have been from your day one until now, because the collections have changed drastically. I mean, it's really kind of night and day how the museum has morphed over the years and has just gotten better and better. Early on, when you started, you went through, you gathered all of our records together from all these nooks and crannies all over the building. And you did a history of the FIDA Museum, which had never really been compiled before.
That's
So
right.
tell me about why you wanted to do that.
Well, I wanted to do that to immerse myself in the museum. I know that many different people have worked to make the museum what it is over a number of decades. Our museum was founded unofficially in 73, 74 by FIDM instructors. They found a closet on one of the campuses and started to deposit their vintage clothes, their designer clothes into it so they could tell our students and show our students what makes a Chanel jacket a Chanel jacket. How is a Victorian bodice boned? And I wanted to understand where the museum had been and where it was going. And so that was really important for me to really understand that. Mm-hmm.
And also policies, the museum, we didn't have really any technical, official policies about collecting. And why is it important for an institution to have collection policies?
Right. So we started writing a collecting policy, and we've had some questions about this. What makes something museum worthy? Or how do you decide what to collect? And really that depends on the institution and the institution's mission statement. And and the other thing is you do need to write these things down so everyone is literally on the same page, and also so that what we have done and what everyone has done in the past and what our intentions have been can be easily passed on to the next generation of curators and museum staff. I think it's really important. And so what we did is worked under the guidelines of the American Association of Museums, California Association of Museums, those types of organizations, so we could see examples, and we started to write our collecting policies. And for us, we have one guiding sentence that guides the pieces that come into the FIDA Museum, and that derives from the first sentence of our mission statement. The FIDA Museum collects, preserves, and interprets fashion objects and support materials with outstanding design merit. That was going to be our sentence. So it's not just Kevin and Christina saying, oh, I like that dress, oh, I like that pair of shoes. No,
right.
It needs to
be very
be
important
specific.
point.
Yes, and so that's what we're guided by. And we also have defined what outstanding design merit is. And for us, that means it is dynamic on exhibition or in publication. It's visually arresting. And it also is important that it shows a designer's work or an era very well, and that it has cultural and artistic significance. In other words, we want to be able to talk about a lot of things, and we want our audience, whether that's FITM students or enthusiasts or scholars, to be able to learn and be inspired by every single piece we have.
And it's not that those pieces have to be fancy.
No.
They can also be plain,
no, absolutely,
or very strong with silhouette.
Absolutely, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
I think it's interesting that we have that very specific, well-defined policy for the museum, because we are a design museum. You know, we're not an art museum like the Metropolitan Museum of Art that really collects according to how fashion items fit within the continuum of art movements, or a history museum like the Smithsonian, which really places objects in time and for specific reasons. And they can be everything from a plow to a couture dress. It doesn't matter. It's that historical aspect of the museum. And who wore it, where it was worn, if the lady fell down a staircase and tore her skirt, suddenly that's very important because it places that object where she's supposed to be in time. We don't collect that way. We collect according to, as you were mentioning, design merit, how important something is in its given time period, the maker, what was going on in fashion. So Christina, question, does that mean that we need to start collecting masks?
Oh, yes, I think it does. I think that some designers are already starting to output masks, and that will certainly be added to our collection because we collect all the way to the very present moment. We collect today, we collect tomorrow. So we're always looking for things to add to the collection. And I will say that each object that comes into the collection, whether it's a tiny baby booty or the biggest ball gown, it generally takes about 8 hours of processing time. Now, that doesn't even include looking for that object or speaking to donors about it. That literally is from when the object enters our museum office and it's photographed, a description is made, it's valued, it might need to be frozen or vacuumed, tags are added to it. So we need to be careful about the number of pieces that we accept in a year because it does take valuable time to process it.
So we had questions sent in advance before our conversation, and one of the questions was from one of our audience members. And, you know, if anybody watching, if you have a question, please type in and we'll try to answer it for you. One of the questions is, what makes something museum worthy?
Well, again, I think it depends on the museum, you know, and we have our collecting sentence. I'll say that, you know, usually when we're looking for things to acquire, I'll get a text from you or I'll get an email from you with a photo and I'll respond. And it's that moment when you think, when you see and you have that feeling like, oh, this is amazing. This is amazing. And I want to show it to our audience. I want to collect it. I want to preserve it. I want to interpret it for people who find joy in these objects. It's like a feeling and you know it's right. So there you go.
I think that's a really perfect example of the blend of policy of your museum, because you know your museum so well. Also, you know your collection very well. I mean, one of the things when you and I were really young curators, going through the FITM Museum collection and trying to determine what it is that we have and what is it that we need in order to have kind of a balanced collection. I think one of the things that we discovered is that we had something like 500 early 1960s, kind of the Jackie Kennedy look suit.
Yes.
And we realized we don't need all of those suits. So we selected the ones that were really kind of the most visually striking, the most important design-wise, and then we did away with all of the others. And when we're out looking, we have an idea of what we would love to have for the collection that's not represented. And then, as you mentioned, it's that kind of aha moment, something for me that happens when I'm looking at an object, maybe at an auction, or if somebody sends in a photo, is it suddenly leaps out
Yes.
at me from the photo, from looking at it.
Yes, and you and I have seen thousands and thousands of objects. We've seen so many objects that we have this almost database in our minds that we can compare and contrast to, let alone the concrete database we have with Past Perfect, our museum database that we can look and check. But yeah, it was really important for us to go through the collection, and we started at the first hanger in the first box. And we went through, and part of that was because I was collections manager for the first few years of my career at the FIDA Museum, and we were looking at things, looking at condition issues, and we just went through the whole collection to see what the strengths were, what the weaknesses are. We do have internal documents where we have noted these strengths and weaknesses and what we need to do in order to collect. So it's really important.
Question from one of our audience members. What was your most amazing find for the museum and why? And just before you answer that, so you think about that for just a second, and it doesn't have to be...
Oh, my mind's going blank. Oh.
I know, because there's so many, right? One of the criteria that Christina and I have for any object that enters the museum's collection, no matter how very fancy it is or very plain, you know, that it fits our mission statement, is really for two reasons. You know, it's being a design museum, that's really key. And the first is, what would it look like on exhibition? Because that's how we present our objects to our students and to our visiting public. You know, is on display on a mannequin or in a vitrine in our galleries. And number two would be, what does it look like? How does it relate? How would it capture somebody's eye in a photograph?
Right.
Because, you know, we do presentations online. We give lots of PowerPoint presentations to visiting groups, or we go to groups around the country and talk. You know, and we're presenting these objects not in front of the people, but they need to see the image. So it's really important about visual presentation for these objects being a design museum. So what would be one of your all-time favorite objects? I know it's hard because just so everybody knows, we have approximately, and we're doing a full inventory right now, 15,000 plus pieces of historical dress, meaning garments, dressing head to toe, from hats to shoes and everything in between and inside and out. And also around 200,000 pieces from our special collections, which includes photography, fashion magazines, periodicals, fashion plates, etc. So we've got a lot to choose from. But do you have a favorite or a couple of favorites?
No, I do not have a favorite. I have many favorites. I will say that you are generally the lead on acquisitions, and then we work together to decide, should we buy it, how in the world we're going to buy it, that kind of thing. But I will say, talking about full circle, that I am proud of acquiring a certain printed cotton 1840s gown. And I am playing a favorite here. 1840s is one of my favorite decades. And I remember that we were at the Dallas Antiques Fair, and we were actually both there speaking at the behest of a wonderful donor to the FIDA Museum, Stephen Porterfield. And I saw a piece that just, like you said, it just all of a sudden just sung to me. It was a blue and white roller printed 1840s gown, pristine, unaltered. Now, usually I would go over to you and say, Kevin, what do you think about this? Should we get it? I think we should, but I actually didn't. I said, I looked around, I didn't know where you were. I didn't want anyone else to acquire it. I knew it was amazing and it filled a gap in the collection. And I looked at the dealer and I said, we'll take it. And so we purchased it. And now it is one of my favorite pieces in sporting fashion, Outdoor Girls, 1800 to 1960 in the catalog. And we have displayed it in a very innovative way, something that we're very proud of. And so I'd say today, that's my favorite, the thing I'm proudest of.
Well, I hadn't discussed this with you, but I was really thinking of doing away with the entire 1840s decade out of the collection.
No.
We can talk about this later. So another question that has come in is, have you continued to collect during quarantine? Now, we talked about masks, and I have seen designers now are starting to come out with, designer masks. Like I saw a Chanel with the double C's, just over the mouth area.
Yeah.
And yes, we need to collect this because, as you mentioned, we do collect up to the minute. But we would not collect surgical masks.
No.
And why is that?
Well, we're not a social history museum.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of a surgical mask, I feel that the story behind it would be more important, or perhaps the technology behind it. But we really are designer-oriented, graphic-oriented, and so we would not collect that. That would not be appropriate for our museum. However, it's a very important material culture for another museum. Mm-hmm.
Right. Right, and that's the difference. So we would really be looking at the design-oriented masks that would have pattern. Lee Wishner just commented, please pattern.
Oh, pattern.
And,
exactly.
And, the different design houses and how, and somebody just commented, get one of Christian Siriano's masks.
Yes, absolutely.
That is perfect.
That is to collect. Yes. Yes.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because, it's not just something that is a spur of the moment. This is something now that's gone on a number of months and will continue on for the foreseeable future. We don't know when we're all going to feel comfortable going outdoors, being with each other, not, being protective and covering a mask and making sure that the person that we're talking to is safe, that we don't do anything by spreading this virus.
Exactly.
So, but at the same time, to see how creative, like out on Facebook, on Instagram, people are becoming with their masks and having the mask with a coordinated hat, coordinated mm-hmm. gloves. That's something design-wise that then really resonates with our museum.
Yes, and I'm sure we're going to be having some conversations about this moving forward, and we'll start to look for pieces to acquire as well. Absolutely.
And, just for all those who are watching, if you have a favorite designer mask that you end up not needing anymore, please contact the FITA Museum because it might be something that we'd be interested in adding to our collection.
Yes.
So, okay, well, I want to talk about now specifics within the museum's collection. We do have multiple types of collections.
Yeah.
The whole collection is permanent. I mean, everything that's in our museum is considered kind of a permanent home with the museum. But we do have that larger overall collection broken down. Can you explain and talk about some of the different categories that we have in our museum?
Well, we do have the permanent collection, yes. We have multiple collections. We also have a hands-on study collection, and that was grouped together specifically for our FITM students and our instructors to have a hands-on teaching tool. These pieces are taken into classrooms, and by the way, the study collection is open to everyone, not just FITM mm-hmm. students. Anyone can contact us and make an appointment for that. These pieces are
all of our collections.
All of our collections, that's correct. Mm-hmm. And so these pieces, it's an amazing collection. It includes pieces from the 18th century all the way to the present, designer pieces. And these things are taken into the classrooms and our students use them. And it is not just the fashion design students who use these pieces. These pieces are used by our graphic design students. I know that the public speaking class has even debated about pieces in our collection. So it really is a group of things that are used by the entire FITM community. And it's also important because with the rest of our collections, that is really a hands-off collection. Because we need to be able to preserve these pieces. So handling fashion and textiles and papers, it's not great for them. So it's generally the museum staff who handle these pieces and facilitate research appointments. We will open up the lapel so you can see underneath, or we will open something so you can see. But with the study collection, people can use that on their own. They cannot wear them. They need to be careful and wash their hands, but those pieces are meant to be used up in the space of about 10, 15 years. So that's a very important collection that we have. We also have what we call special collections, and that's a term derived from library sciences, and those are generally paper-based pieces that illustrate the behind-the-scenes aspects of making and wearing fashion. So we have a photography collection, fashion plates.
Which you founded for the museum.
I did. I founded our photography collection, fashion plates, magazines, rare books. And within that special collections, we have archives. And those are the papers, either business records or inspirational records of makers, wearers, and collectors. So for example, we have a wonderful Helen Larson archive. She was a collector that I'm sure some of you who are watching will recognize the name. We have the Maurice Levin archive, and he was a wonderful designer for Catalina and Jansen in the mid-century. Lots of swimwear like that. Swimwear, exactly, swimwear. So, you know, those are two collections that we have.
How about Betsy?
Yes, we have the, how could I forget Betsy? We have the Betsy Bloomingdale archive, and she was one of the founding donors to the FIDM Museum in 1977 and gave over many years designer pieces, most notably Marc Boin for Christian Dior Haute Couture. And along with her wardrobe, she also gave the croquis, the hand-illustrated fashion illustrations from the House of Dior. I think there's also the House of Balmain, Givenchy, YSL. And then just, I think it was 2 years ago after she passed away, her family gave to us her personal papers, which includes a huge amount of correspondence, photography, her personal scrapbooks with every single time she was in Women's Wear Daily or W Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and also her journals where she would note all of her table settings and what she would serve at the parties. So really,
that's one of my favorites.
Oh, this wonderful group of pieces related to a woman living in mid-century, late 20th century, and how she would entertain here in Southern California.
And bring the world of fashion to her house.
Exactly.
It's so interesting to see the layouts of
oh, it's amazing.
She was table settings, decorations. She would also note what she wore each night, the jewelry that she wore. It was all so organized, amazing. You know, and Christina and I did a project with her. It was just perfectly timed too. We came out with High Style, Betsy Bloomingdale, and the Haute Couture in 2009, and we did the exhibition, which traveled to the American Textile History Museum, which is now unfortunately closed. And we did an exhibition catalog and a documentary too, which we are very soon going to be releasing on YouTube. It's a 4-part documentary, which is fantastic. And it was so lovely working with her because, you know, we're school, and we would give her homework, and she would go into her scrapbooks and find all the information that we needed, and then, you know, we'd have tea yet again at her house, which
and
was
what was it you liked? There was something she would always make for you. Lemon cake?
It was called skillet cake. And it's a lemon. It's a lemon, a very flat, kind of very moist lemon with powdered sugar and cream, and it was delicious. And I miss it because we had it when she would always make it for me. It was really, really sweet. What's really interesting is this kind of connection with fashion is that after she passed away, her family sold her home, and it was Tom Ford who purchased her home. And so I would love to be able to walk inside again to see what it is that he's done to the house, because she lived there for more than 50 years. But so collecting during quarantine is something that we don't stop, because, you know, there's you never know the opportunity when something might come up that is for the museum's collection. But also we hope that people will still research with us, even if they can't come to see us, you know, physically right now. We do have a lot of researchers around the world and interested parties who contact us about things in our museum's collection. So Christina, can you explain to our viewers, how is it that you can research at the FIDM Museum even if you don't come and visit us?
Yes, all it takes is an email to start off the process. It's a very easy email to remember, info@fidmmuseum.org. And that generally comes to me. And you can let us know what you're interested in seeing. Maybe there's something specific that you've seen posted online from our collection. Maybe you're researching a certain topic. You know, not all of our collections are on our past perfect online database. Many of them are. We're working diligently to get more and more on there. But in order to really research pieces in our collection, you do need to reach out to either Kevin or me. And then what we'll do is have an email discussion, which we can talk on the phone too. That's easy. And we can send lots and lots of photos of pieces to you, just with like a Dropbox link, and detail photos, whatever is needed. We can look at our donor files, our research files, and we're happy to facilitate that kind of digital research appointment. And that's how we log it. It's called a digital research appointment. So thank goodness for technology. It's not the same as looking at something in person, but it's awfully close, and we're really happy to be able to accommodate those requests.
But it's a good start too, because that's often how any type of research begins. You don't just show up at an institution and say, hey, pull out all of this,
sometimes people don't have that research grant to travel to Los Angeles and come in person. And it's really important for us that people are able to access our collections, either in person or digitally. Otherwise, why have a collection, right?
Right. And it's so much easier now to do it because we have photos of our pieces. We are getting more and more of those images out on our Past Perfect collection search through our website, which, by the way, our entire website, thank you, Joanna Abajouti. We love you so much. We are working to completely revamp the Fit in Museum website. It's going to be much more user-friendly and much more robust. And that is slated to come out live by the end of this year, we hope, or the beginning of next year, very early beginning of next year. So, but because we have these photos in our database, and Macon Hansen, our registrar, has just uploaded another 400 objects to the database. So it's always changing, it's always being added to. So it's good to always go back and check to see if you didn't see something before, you might see it now. But because we've got these photos, and you've come up with these really fantastic kind of digital presentations for people, and that is so much easier even to do than 10 years ago. And it's so much safer for the objects too.
That's true. And then we save all those photos, and we're ready to send them on to the next person who'd like to look at the same object.
So in our questions in advance before our talk, we asked, what would you like to see in the Fit in Museum collection? And one of our viewers said Irene Lentz, and I believe that person meant Irene Lentz Gibbons, who was a mid-century designer, actually kind of started in the 30s, went into the 1960s, was located here in Hollywood, had her own fashion line, designed for the movies and the theater, so a very versatile designer. And we're really fortunate to have the Hollywood Costume Collection from the City of Parks and Recreation. Christina, before I talk about Irene, can you give just a little bit of information about this Hollywood Costume Collection, because you are the one who did major research on it? Right.
Well, the Hollywood community has attempted to found a Hollywood museum for many, many years. And now we're seeing some success with the Academy Museum that is going to be open, and it's very, very exciting. But for a while, they did not have such luck. And this group called the Hollywood Museum Associates was founded here in Los Angeles in the early 1960s. And they started soliciting donations from stars for costumes, both personal and screen worn, actual films, photos, scrapbooks, lots and lots of things. Unfortunately, that group went defunct and went bankrupt in the mid-1960s. And the assets were held in a storage unit in Los Angeles. And the city of Los Angeles came in and purchased those.
Which had actually been an old city jail.
Right, I said storage, but it was a jail. They stored the stuff in a jail. And we have photos of pieces from our Hollywood Costume Collection hanging out, behind bars, which are odd to see, but they were safe for the most part. And the city of Los Angeles, it is their property, but they decided in the early 1990s to give pieces to other cultural institutions that could better care for them. So I believe UCLA received the films, the Margaret Herrick Library received many of the paper materials, and we received on permanent loan the costume collection. And it includes pieces worn by Jean Harlow, it includes Fred Astaire, it includes silent screen pieces. And it includes the largest collection of Marlene Dietrich pieces outside of the Berlin Film Museum, which acquired her estate.
I noticed that Michelle Fenimore is watching us. Hi, Michelle. And she borrowed a few years ago for a Hollywood Glamour exhibition that was at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. So it was really exciting to be able to take some of those pieces from the Hollywood collection and show them in Boston.
Yes.
One of our viewers asked about Irene, and as you mentioned, we have Marlene Dietrich. The extraordinary collection of Dietrich, her gowns, suits, shoes, and including this gown. So I want to show this.
Oh, yeah.
This is a publicity still from the late 1930s, early 1940s. It's not dated. That shows this absolutely incredible Irene gown that Dietrich wore. Now, Christina, do you know, I'm sorry, this is kind of a surprise for you. Do you know any specifics about this dress? Can you remember anything?
No, and it's really frustrating. You don't have a photo of it in person, do you? Do you have one with the colors or no?
I have a detailed shot of the fabric. This is the color.
That's the color. It's so vibrant, and there's some hand painting on it. And it's frustrating because there's 3 or 4 shots of her wearing this, but no one has been able to determine if it was in fact screen worn in anything. It could be that it was screen worn, but that section did not make it into the film. So if anyone sees her wearing this anywhere, even in her personal life, we would love to hear about it. She was known to wear Irene. She had many Irene pieces, and some of the pieces she wore personally, some on screen. So this is a piece that's still a bit of a mystery to us, but one of our favorite Irene pieces.
We do have another Irene that she wore personally before World War II. She wore during World War II to entertain the troops. And you actually found a snapshot,
yes,
you know, an anonymous snapshot of her in the middle, you know, on stage, you know, wearing the gown. And isn't she playing a saw?
That was part of the set. She did not wear that particular gown for the set, no. And she also wore it in the film A Foreign Affair. And it's
which
very
was then
special.
about World War II.
Yeah, you know, maybe we can focus on that gown when we have photos in our next collection conversation. It's very special.
Perfect. It is.
And it's Irene, yeah.
And it's Irene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
You've got
okay.
You've got to filter the collection down. What is one piece that really, really revved your engines when you heard about it, when you saw it, and what was the circumstance around it?
Right. So we received a question about, you know, what is your favorite piece in the Fitta Museum collection? And it's very difficult to choose. It changes as we get more things in. It depends on what projects we're working on. And what I would like to share is something that I'm working on right now. The piece that I'm going to be talking about is Rudi Gernreich's Max Factor Futuro Armor Ensemble. I know that's a mouthful.
Maybe you should say that one more time.
Let's see if I get the words right. Rudi Gernreich Max Factor Futuro Armor Ensemble. You will know what I'm talking about at the end of my story if you don't. But Rudi Gernreich was a very well-known Los Angeles-based designer working here in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, well-known for his knitwear, his clashing colors, for designs that really freed the female body. And in 1985, the Fitta Museum received a bequest from his estate through his life partner, Orest Pucciani, of his private archive, the pieces he had kept in a bedroom in his home from the runway, samples, amazing things. And so we have a great, great archive of his pieces and his sketches. I've long been interested in his work. I'm currently working on a catalog based on the Fitta Museum's collection. We've had a photo shoot. So I'm immersed in Rudi Gernreich right now. Now, let's see. Max Factor was a very well-known cosmetics company, international, but based here in Los Angeles. And they commissioned Rudi Gernreich in 1973 to design pieces for a South American cosmetics.
Let me go back for just a second.
Yes.
For those who don't know Max Factor, because he was a makeup artist.
He was, yeah.
And really got started in the silent era here in Hollywood and was one of the pioneers of developing makeup for the movies.
That's
because,
right.
you had this heavy grease paint makeup with coal eyes, very thick, that had been worn on stage because, of course, people were, a long way away from the audience, the actors. But suddenly with the screen, you know what? You could be as close, as can, a close-up. And that kind of early grease paint makeup didn't work. So Max Factor helped to develop a form of makeup that became compatible with movies and the really strong lights. That's right. and so forth that were used.
That's right. And then they expanded it in the 50s and 60s to everyday consumers. And so they were an international company by the 70s. And in 72, 73, they reached out to Rudi Gernreich to design 2 costumes essentially for a South American campaign. And these costumes would be used in photography and promotional materials, and they would also be taken to various countries in South America and would be shown on the runway. And the costumes were meant to illustrate what a woman would wear in the year 2000. Now, one set of costumes was to be for private life, for the privacy of your own home. And I'm sorry, I don't have a photo of these, but they were basically long gowns of sheer crinkled chiffon that were sewn together at intervals. So elements of the body would peek through. The bust would be exposed. And this was private dressing. This was in the safety of your home. And one was all black and one was all white chiffon. And the other set of costumes was the armor, the Futuro armor, what a woman would wear in the year 2000 outside, public dressing. And, Rudi Gernreich was known for these fashion pronouncements, what people would wear in the future. And so he designed something that would be quite protective. And it was essentially a full chainmail bodysuit, one in black, one in white, aluminum chainmail. And it had plates of plastic, but armor all over it. There was a helmet also. And I have a photo, because I'm prepared, I have a photo from this book. I know it's backwards, but Rudi Gernreich, Fashion Will Go Out of Fashion, an exhibition based in 2000 at the Neue Gallery in Austria. This is edited by Brigitte Felderer. I'm going to go real slow so you can see, but here are the armor ensembles. You can see the full chainmail bodysuit, and then those plastic armor elements on the thighs, the breastplate, the shoulders, that kind of thing. Now did Brigitte Felderer, did she borrow those for the exhibition in 2000? No, because no one knew where they were. And this is the thing. Most museums who do a Rudi exhibition, they do come to us because we have such an extensive archive. However, it's not encyclopedic. We're working towards that, but it doesn't have everything. No one knew where these armor pieces were, and we would receive requests every few years for them. And basically, people thought they'd been thrown in the dumpster after the campaign. We even had Andrew Bolton at the Metropolitan Museum of Art contacted me because he was working on his superheroes exhibition and wanted to borrow that. And I told him, no, unfortunately, as far as we know, they do not survive. They were destroyed. That's right. No one knew where they were, and I'd always wondered. And it was in 2010 that a donor donated one of the private pieces, one of the chiffon pieces to us. And her mother, Helen Larson, had a costume rental company, and she really didn't know how her mother had acquired this. Maybe she worked with Max Factor, don't know. But it got me thinking, like, gosh, if one is out there, and that was very exciting, by the way, to receive that private dressing chiffon ensemble from that 73 Futuro campaign. I thought, well, I wonder where the other pieces are. And it just, we didn't know. Okay, so we'll fast forward a few years. I don't know when this was, maybe 2017, Kevin, something like that? Or 18. I think it was 18. 18? Okay. Yeah. We were driving to the donor's home, the same donor who had donated the private dressing ensemble, and she wanted to give to the museum, I believe, some Godey's Ladies books. So we were there, and you know what? We were running a little late. I was driving, and I asked Kevin to please give her a call and let her know when we were going to arrive. And she said, I've been cleaning out my garage, and... Wait a minute. What? I'm on the phone. You're driving. I'm driving. You're on the phone. I'm like, oh, please call her. We're running late. So you're on the phone. And I hear you say, weird box, metal mesh, weird armor. I was like, oh, no, it can't be. No. So the woman, her name is Jane, and she's super sweet. And it's been a lovely donor to the museum. Supportive. Mm-hmm.
And she is one of the Larson sisters whom we acquired the fabulous Helen Larson collection from.
That's
and
right.
the archive, as you talked about earlier in our conversation. And we were acquiring another group of objects from her, and we were actually taking her a check.
Yes.
And thank you to our phenomenal fashion council, because they are the ones who did so much hard work to raise the money for us to be able to acquire these collections. Yeah. So we were going, it was friendly. You know, it's like, oh, instead of mailing the check, well, let's just go and deliver it in person. And because she also said that she had some things she wanted us to look at.
That's right. And I heard you say weird, and then you hung up the phone and you said, yeah. Jane said she has an old box with a Max Factor label on it, and there's some weird armor in it. And I thought, oh my gosh, it can't be. It cannot be. And of course, I was so excited and so nervous, but I was playing it cool. You know, when we went into her garage, and very well organized, and there was this large old box, and there was a label on it with a vintage font that said Max Factor, and Helen Larson's name and address was on it. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to open it. It's always so exciting when you're opening a box, but you always think, oh, it's not going to be it, or there's going to be a piece missing. And I opened the first layer of tissue, and it was brown and brittle, and there was dust. And I saw a plate, and I thought, oh my gosh, please let the metal mesh suit be there. And I started to remove the layers, and one by one, the plates were coming out, and the full black mesh bodysuit came out. And then there were elements of the white ensemble also, but essentially we ended up with the full black ensemble. And it was, I mean, I'm getting a chill right now, because to think that for so long, those pieces of the material culture of Rudi Gernreich's career had been missing, had been lost. And now they're here at the Fitta Museum and can be preserved and interpreted and used for our upcoming catalog is astounding. You know, talk about full circle.
Right. And it really does shock us all the time, extraordinary things that still come to light. Absolutely. I mean, the rarest objects in the world are not necessarily in museum collections already. There are things that are out there that really absolutely amaze us. And I think that's why we stay excited about our profession, because, you know, there's always a new turn. There's always something that comes up that just blows our mind, and then instantly we want to share them with everybody on the planet. So like you said, it's the full black and then just bits and pieces of the white.
Yes, bits and pieces. But what's amazing is that I had done an oral history with Lane Nielsen, Rudi Gernreich's assistant designer and accessory designer in the mid-60s and 70s. And he was the one responsible for realizing the private dressing and public dressing elements of the Max Factor campaign from Rudi Gernreich's sketches. And he was also the one to go down to South America with the two models. And by the way, these ensembles were made for women the models who were over 6 feet tall. I believe they were 6 feet 2 inches tall. So it really gave an idea of strength and protection. And he went and he was the one dressing them. And before these pieces materialized, he told me that it was very challenging to dress the models in the suits. Essentially, they would don the metallic suit, and inevitably, elements of the armor would pop out, and he would have to take a needle nose pliers and repress them at areas such as the knees or the elbows. And then the individual plastic armor elements would then be hooked on to hooks and eyes. He would slide his hand, for example, into the sleeve and manipulate the arm shield onto the sleeve, onto the large hooks and eyes. So when I was opening this box, I was looking for these large hooks and eyes that he had told me about, and sure enough, they were there. And sure enough, the big zipper he told me about was there, and that there were small elements of loss and places where the plate had come apart. And it was amazing to be able to align the imagery that I had seen, his oral history, with now these extant artifacts. It was amazing. You know, and it all took place in the garage, in a dusty garage.
Yeah, in Jane's garage. And probably really had not been open for nearly 45 years.
No, and it turns out that, you know, she didn't have a lot of information, but her mother did work on different campaigns for Max Factor. And so she thought that perhaps her mother had purchased these ensembles to enter into her costume rental business. She thought that maybe she could rent them out as a Halloween costume or as an extras costume. But I don't think they ever were rented out because they are so specific.
Right. And we don't know what each of these elements, the armor plates, we don't know exactly what they're made of yet. It's not, we are definitely going to have to get a conservator involved.
It's lightweight though. It is a lightweight. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and there's definitely going to need conservation on some of the elements because they were stacked on each other, and with the weight and time, some of them have bent and flattened, especially like the shoulder elements wouldn't fit on a mannequin's shoulder right now. So we've already talked to our conservator, Cara Varnell, about, you know, what would it take to be able to conserve these so that they can be dressed again. But boy, even putting these on a mannequin is going to be very challenging, kind of like the challenge that Lane had actually dressing the models, you know, on set for the Max Factor. We're going to have to probably figure out some kind of way of doing this that is not necessarily how they were meant to go together, because it's almost impossible to fit those slides in the way it's designed. It's not user-friendly dressing.
No, it was definitely a piece that was better suited for a photography campaign for the Future World promotion versus a runway show, because Lane even shared with me that the models could not go downstairs. It was too difficult with all of the layers, and they kind of just had to stand there, you know? So it was more for the presentation, for the exhibition of the piece.
Right. The ideal idea that doesn't necessarily translate into reality.
That's right. The concept behind the wearable fashion.
But isn't that how fashion often moves forward?
Yes.
Because somebody comes up with an unusual idea that everybody thinks maybe is a little crazy, and it doesn't work, but there's an element that comes out of it that then, you know, the fashion industry or whatever industry ends up adopting because nobody had thought of it before.
That's right.
That's one of the great things about fashion. And it's one of the things that we look for as well for, you know, as a design museum, is that design aspect. One thing actually I never thought about to this moment is we have actually collected a few patent pieces. Two particularly I can think of. One is a early 30s man's swimsuit, wool knit, with this kind of weird chest pocket on the inside that still has the original, it's kind of torqued now, but inner tube that the guy himself, through his pocket, could blow up the inner tube and then, you know, float on the water. And we had it was donated by the family. It was their great-grandfather or grandfather, and they still had his patents that had all been signed off and so forth. So to have something like that's amazing. And then I remember being at a vintage show, and a good dealer friend of ours had this great woman's swimsuit from the 1950s, you know, very one piece, very curvaceous. But it was real odd too, because it was stitched in rectangles. The whole thing was rectangle, 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 rectangle. And then on the inside were rectangle cut corks put in, so the entire swimsuit becomes her life preserver, life buoy. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, these aspects that pop up that as an aspect of design, these things that don't necessarily work, but are fascinating aspects of how the fashion industry comes up with ideas, practices them, adopts the ones that work, and then continue on. That's so right. I want to bring up.
We have 2 minutes.
One of my.
We only have 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Yeah. My all-time favorites. Seriously, all-time favorites. Okay, you mentioned Stephen Porterfield. He's been one of the great donors to the FITA Museum over the last 15 years. And we're actually going to be doing a small installation of his, hopefully later this year. And hopefully people can come and visit. But we've been working on sporting fashion for 15 years, literally. And Stephen has kept his eyes out, finding things for us. Look, like, Kevin, what is it that you're looking for? One of my all-time fantasies was to find a matched women's cycling ensemble. Well, Stephen said, I'm sending you a box of something really weird. And to make this quick, the box arrived. You had just left for the day. The box came really late in the day, and you had left. And so I'm in the office, and I'm, opening it up, and I looked in, and it's like this jacket was there with these massive sleeves. I thought, what is this? And I pulled this thing up, and it's massive. And I had a dress form, so I put it on the dress form. I thought, okay, this is pretty out of control. I mean, it's fabulous, but wow, this woman was bold. Mm-hmm. And then I looked in the box again, and I saw a gaiter, which is the lower part of the legs that a woman wears when she's bicycling. I thought, oh my God, it's a cycling ensemble. And I pull out both of the gaiters. And there was one more element in there, and I couldn't quite make out what it was. And I thought, please let it be bloomers. It's great if it's a matched skirt.
Yeah.
But let my fantasy come true